On day two of the highly publicized trial involving Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie Ventura, the courtroom was rocked not by new testimony or legal maneuvering, but by something outside its walls, a social media post from Justin Bieber. As reporters scrambled and phones buzzed in courthouse hallways, Bieber's message of support for Cassie sent shockwaves through the music industry and the legal proceedings. Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, Diddy's demeanor rapidly fell apart. Once cool and calculated, he now sat hunched, visibly shaking, his leg bouncing, his breath coming fast. When court resumed, he exploded, shouting at Cassie, knocking over a water glass, and accusing both her and Bieber of betrayal. "Where's your loyalty?" he screamed. His lawyer tried to pull him down, whispering urgently, but Diddy shoved him off, sending the attorney stumbling. The contrast between Cassie and Diddy couldn't have been more pronounced. While Diddy ranted and gestured wildly, Cassie sat calm and poised, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed forward. She didn't flinch, she didn't speak, she didn't even look at Diddy. The difference in how they carried themselves made a clear impression on the jury and on everyone else watching. What Cassie revealed in her testimony was deeply disturbing. Years of surveillance, control, and psychological abuse. She spoke of being told which male artists she could speak to, being isolated, and being monitored to the point of paranoia. She described threats, career-ending threats from Diddy if she ever stepped out of line. The details were chilling, and her calm delivery made them even more powerful. But the emotional and legal turning point was the introduction of direct evidence, text messages between Bieber and Cassie from 2017. In them, Cassie wrote, "He monitors everything. He said if I talk to anyone, he'll make sure I never work again." Bieber responded with concern. "This isn't right. You need to talk to someone who can help." These weren't recent accusations. They were warnings from years ago. Earlier that day, the prosecution had presented video footage from 2018 showing Cassie attempting to speak with another male artist before being pulled away by Diddy. The footage matched her testimony exactly, reinforcing her story with hard visual proof. It became harder and harder to see this as just, he said, she said. Observers in the courtroom, including legal experts and media veterans, saw it unfold in real time. A federal prosecutor in the gallery whispered, "He just lost right there." Another attorney shook his head, muttering, "Amateur hour." It was becoming obvious to everyone. Diddy's outburst had done what no witness could. It shattered his credibility in front of the jury. As the tension rose, the judge ordered an immediate recess and imposed new rules. Diddy would undergo a psychiatric evaluation before proceedings resumed. Security would remain within arm's reach of him at all times. His phone privileges were revoked. His lawyers were now required to speak to him only in the presence of officers. He had gone from music mogul to a defendant under tight surveillance, practically overnight. While everyone processed the courtroom chaos, Bieber's post continued to ripple outside. His message wasn't vague, it was detailed and damning. He described watching Diddy grab Cassie's arm too tightly, interrupt her mid-sentence, and dominate her interactions during public appearances. These weren't tabloid claims. These were first-hand observations from a former protege. Jurors noticed the shift, too. One woman physically moved her chair away from Diddy. A man who had been taking meticulous notes earlier now sat stone-faced, arms crossed. Another juror, who had smiled at Diddy on day one, now refused to look at him. The emotional impact of seeing a celebrity melt down in real time was undeniable. It wasn't just about Bieber's post, it was also about the courtroom's visual storytelling. A sketch artist said Diddy's facial expression during his outburst, bulging eyes, clenched jaw, veins popping, was the most intense image she'd ever drawn. What had started as a trial about private abuse had suddenly become a very public unraveling. And as prosecutors presented each new piece of evidence, Cassie continued to deliver her testimony with clarity and grace. She referenced specific dates: March 8th at the Standard Hotel, June 22nd in Miami, September 12th backstage at the VMAs. Her story didn't waver. Her voice didn't crack. The strength in her voice mirrored the weight of her words. What hit hardest was her answer to why she hadn't spoken up before. He told me nobody would believe me, that he controls who works in this industry. And then she added something that froze the courtroom. Even Justin knows what happens to people who cross me. With Bieber now publicly on her side, the threat seemed horrifyingly real and utterly damning for Diddy. The judge delivered her own statement after the courtroom was cleared. "This is a court of law, not a recording studio," she said sternly. "You do not control what happens here." She warned Diddy that another outburst would result in contempt of court and possibly jail time for the remainder of the trial. It was a line that symbolized the whole case. Diddy could no longer dictate the narrative. Outside of Diddy's meltdown, the prosecution had also made a strategic move. They began preparing a witness whose testimony could directly reinforce what Bieber said in his statement. Someone who had been hesitant before but now felt empowered. The wave of momentum was clearly shifting. Back in the courtroom, the jury re-entered with visibly different energy. No more open minds or curious glances. Most stared straight ahead, stone-faced. One juror, who had smiled at Diddy earlier, now turned her chair slightly away from him. The tone had changed. The jury wasn't just watching a trial. They were watching someone self-destruct in front of them. In the hallway, reporters rushed to update their editors. Screenshots of Bieber's post circulated like wildfire. Court staff printed copies for the legal teams. People whispered, stared at their phones, and showed each other the post. Even Cassie's lawyers looked stunned at the impact it was having in real time. Legal experts say that behavior in court matters as much as evidence, and Diddy's breakdown proved that point. He didn't just argue his innocence, he threatened people, shouted at witnesses, and claimed a massive conspiracy was against him. One defense attorney from another case summed it up. "You never let your client become the story." That's exactly what just happened. As day 2 of the trial ended, Diddy exited the courtroom no longer the powerful image of a mogul in control. His tie was loosened, his shoulders slumped. He avoided eye contact with reporters. His team looked like they'd aged years in a matter of hours. One lawyer put a hand on his back to guide him, but Diddy shrugged it off, not in pride, in pure defeat. Cassie, meanwhile, left like she had entered, composed, confident, unbroken. Her strength became the center of the trial. Her story had always been powerful, but with each new revelation, each piece of evidence, and each crack in Diddy's armor, her credibility solidified. What she endured now stood validated, not just by a legal team, but by another major voice who had finally chosen to speak up. And that voice, Justin Bieber's, might be the one that opens the floodgates. More industry figures may follow. More voices may rise. Bieber broke the unspoken celebrity code, and by doing so, may have changed the course of this case and possibly the culture that allowed Diddy to operate unchecked for so long. This trial is no longer about just one woman's story. It's about a system of silence that cracked the moment one famous voice said, "I should have spoken up sooner." And now, the silence is breaking everywhere.